The following reading was commissioned by Grimwolf001. Trixie Meets Pixie by Kendall 2.
There once was a great and powerful pony named Trixie. She was a showmare without compare, heir to the house of Lulamoon. She traveled Equestria far and wide, dazzling town after town with her amazing performances and displays of magic. She was dearly beloved by all her fans. Unfortunately for her, a couple of idiotic but well-meaning cults ruined her life with an Ursa Major upon taking one of her stories far too seriously. Seeking to find a way to reclaim her fame and renown, she sought out a power to make her truly the greatest unicorn in Equestria, and she found it. Unfortunately, such power came with a price. The Alicorn amulet granted her nigh unlimited power, but also consumed and corrupted her until she became a tyrannical despot that may have taken over a town. Thankfully for all, Trixie was freed from the amulet's influence and returned to her lovable, glorious, and quite humble self. But she still needs a way to regain that lost fame and once more become beloved. Thus, she is now in search of a legendary artifact, an egg said to grant its owner the power of discord. She no longer seeks revenge and does not seek to be corrupted again. She simply wishes to have the power to dazzle Equestria again, as she did in days long past. So
Trixie looked at the very confused stallion in front of her.
Any ideas where Trixie can find it?
The annoyed and bored stallion sitting in front of her at the roadside museum merely pointed towards a tall mountain nearby.
Horse apples. Why is it that artifacts...
Trixie muttered, pulling herself up the mountain as snow blew past her head at high speeds.
Of great magical power that don't corrupt your soul are so hard to find,
she muttered, panting as she pulled herself up the cliff to the top of the mountain and collapsed in a snowbank. After a moment's rest, she shook herself and looked upon what awaited her at the mountaintop with wide eyes.
Well, that's definitely not what Trixie expected to find,
she muttered, looking out at the large, beautiful forest greeting her on the snowy mountain peak.
Well, at least if Trixie doesn't get what she came for, she got a wonderful view out of this whole misadventure.
The unicorn continued along the path into the forest, finding it surprisingly dense with animal life for a forest mysteriously at the top of a mountain. Not helping was the fact that it was already well into the night, and thus her vision was somewhat restricted.
This place is weird. Must be the right place then,
she muttered. But after a few minutes of walking, she began to become frustrated at the decided lack of magical artifacts.
Well, this is all very pretty, but why can't the artifact just be right in front of Trixie's in the...
Trixie staggered back, her muzzle having collided straight into a rather healthy, incredibly hard tree, as she had been looking the other way.
Ah! Stupid tree!
The tree, as it so happened, was right next to a pillar of light illuminating an ornately designed Fabergé egg on a pedestal of wood, only a few feet away.
Oh! Helpful tree!
The mare trotted over to the egg and looked it over carefully.
Hey, so, how does Trixie use it?
She inquired, picking the strange artifact up and turning it over and over in her telekinesis.
It's not a conveniently wearable amulet, and Trixie doesn't see any obvious big red button to activate it. Then again, that might just make it explode. Trixie's not falling for that one again.
After several moments of trying to figure out some way or another to open the darn thing, including biting it, she let out a growl.
Why can't these things ever just come with an instruction manual?
Deciding to work from her own wheelhouse, she took a deep breath.
Egg! Grant Trixie the power of discord! Egg powers activate! Go, egg, go! Power up! Just open already!
After several minutes of scaring everything with ears with her screaming to the heavens, Trixie finally glared at the egg.
Trixie just wishes you would open!
The mare gave a scream and dropped the egg as it suddenly lit up with a magical aura. The artifact rattled for a few moments before the top sprung open with a swirling mass of magic. And something emerged. In a bright flash of multicolored magical light, it congealed into a strange little creature Trixie didn't recognize, except for the breezy-like wings and the star-tipped wand on her hand, not hoof.
Wow! It's been a really long time since any pony came up here. Was beginning to think I'd gotten my egg hidden a little too well.
The little creature said as she stretched.
Ah! Trixie accidentally unleashed an ancient creature that might want to take over the world!
Trixie screamed in terror. The strange, bewinged creature blinked in confusion.
No, I don't think I did. This time,
she said, giving a thinking look.
Oh, hello, little pony,
she said with an earnest eagerness. She then gave a gasp.
Oh, is your life not going so great?
Trixie blinked and looked offended for a moment.
Maybe. Your home being destroyed and you made the laughingstock of Equestria tends to make one rather miserable.
The eager little creature got a wide smile.
Good.
Trixie raised an eyebrow as she stared at the strange, oddly happy creature.
Trixie doesn't understand. Oh, I think I do,
the fairy-like creature said before clearing her throat.
Hello, my little pony. My name is Trixie Pixie, and I'm your new...
She flew up and was surrounded by fireworks that spelled out what she said next.
Fairy godparent!
Trixie blinked in confusion.
Fairy godparent? Oh, fairy godparents look after little foals in need of help and grant their wishes,
said the fairy proudly with a wide, admittedly contagious grin.
Trixie isn't a little foal.
Pixie raised an eyebrow.
Yeah, I know I'm not. Oh, right, your name is also Trixie. I'm not a little foal. Oh, you little ponies always act like you're all grown up. Then again, my species doesn't age like yours, so hard to tell sometimes,
the fairy replied with a shrug. Trixie gave an annoyed look, then actually thought about what the strange little creature had said. One specific, very tempting word in particular.
Wait, you grant wishes? Yep, though there are some rules. I'll remember most of them as we go, but a big one is that my wishes will only last until sundown. Oh, and you might not want to tell ponies about me. Most ponies don't believe in fairies, and it gets awkward,
the fairy explained, rubbing the back of her head nervously. The showmare gave an almost giddy laugh.
Trixie guesses this is what they meant by the power of discord.
Pixie cocked her head.
No, I didn't. I don't have anything to do with discord either. Though he did say sometimes I cause discord. Coming from him, is that an insult or a compliment?
Trixie was too caught up in her racing mind to listen to that. So many possibilities. Anything she wanted, just a wish away. Trixie might as well have been a filly again for as excited as she was.
This is so amazing! By the way, what's your name, little pony?
asked the fairy.
The great and powerful Trixie. Yes? That's Trixie's name. I know it's my name, silly. What's yours? Trixie! Yes?
Trixie prepared to open her mouth, then face huffed.
My name is also Trixie. Oh, why didn't you just say so?
The showmare gave a growl of annoyance, but quickly shook herself out of it.
Regardless, Trixie, I think I have my first wish.
Pixie leaned in closely and eagerly.
Yes?
Trixie cleared her throat, then noticed it was still decidedly nighttime.
Oh, right. Your wishes last until nightfall. Oh, and I will make my wish at dawn on the way back.
Trixie walked with the pixie whom shared her name floating behind, constantly looking over at the horizon until finally the sun rose above it.
There it is. So here is my wish.
Pixie gave a grin and waited eagerly.
Yes?
The showmare cleared her throat again, more theatrical than the first time.
There is a festival I managed to get set up to perform at, but likely every pony will somehow know about the incident that ruined my life and heckle me for it. Therefore, I wish that every pony would forget about the Ursa Major incident.
The fairy nodded and held up her wand.
I can do that,
she called, waving her wand and pointing it skyward with a bright flash of light, leaving a rain of fairy dust. Trixie blinked, looking around as fairy dust rained around her.
Did it work?
Yep.
Until sundown, no pony will remember the Ursa incident, whatever that is.
The azure showmare gave a gleeful squee.
Yes! Now Trixie will have the best performance ever! What?
Asked Trixie, staring at the pony in front of her at the entrance to the festival. Rides and lights filled the area behind them, enticing the showmare like a moth to a flame. Sorry, miss, I don't remember talking to you earlier, said the stallion in front of her, let alone making a verbal agreement about you being in the festival.
How could you just forget? It's not like every pony just forgot about Trixie.
The showmare said, slowly going from angry to a look of realization.
Would you excuse me one moment? Trixie needs to check on something.
The mare walked away into a nearby isolated area.
Trixie Pixie!
Pixie suddenly appeared out of a flash of light and a rain of fairy dust.
Yes, little pony? Why did the festival ponies forget about Trixie?
Asked Trixie.
Huh? Why would they know about me? Oh, right. Why did they forget about me?
The fairy cocked her head.
Huh? That's not right. I should have only erased memories of this Ursa incident, whatever that is. Unless I also erased the memories of any conversation you had where you mentioned it to... Did you mention it to that pony?
Trixie raised a hoof and then slapped it against her face.
Great. Well, Trixie could have just wished she remembered,
she said to herself before looking over and finding the festival was now in full gear with its proper schedule set up.
Or not.
Pixie gave a genuinely sad look.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I suppose it ended far better than past festivals did without your magic. Trixie didn't get hit by rotten tomatoes.
Trixie muttered, trying to at least be optimistic. After all, the wish had worked, she just hadn't really considered it properly. She still had a reality warper at her beck and call. One small mix-up was far from enough to make this all not worth it.
Yeah, that would be horrible,
Pixie replied, giving a shudder.
Had it happened before, though that also involved a wish for tomato rain. Or is it something about tomato stains? That's still better than what happened with Rachel,
she muttered, looking ashamed for a moment.
If it makes you feel any better, I'm sure you'd have put on a great show.
Trixie blinked, looking at the fairy and surprised by the genuine care she saw.
You mean that? Yeah, I mean it. Thank you. All right, so there are no limits on the number of wishes, correct?
The showmare questioned her fairy friend.
That's right,
said Pixie.
Wish Trixie knew what to wish for,
Trixie muttered, tapping her chin. The fairy twirled her wand and cast a spell, causing a light bulb to appear above her own head.
Oh, I know. How about something to eat?
Trixie raised a hoof, right as her stomach growled.
That is actually a good suggestion. But why go small when you can have anything you want?
She replied and cleared her throat.
I wish for a dinner at the most luxurious restaurant in Equestria.
Pixie gave an excited nod.
Ooh, you have a big vocabulary for your age. One luxurious dinner coming up,
she said, waving her wand and causing them to vanish in a flash of fairy dust. Trixie sat at the fancy, candlelit table in the middle of a luxuriously decorated room. Octavia and her band stood on stage, playing a relaxing tune. She levitated her fork up, unable to hide a giddy laugh at the fact that the eating utensil was gold-plated and diamond-encrusted. "Your dinner, madam," said the waiter. Trixie was pretty sure his suit was so perfectly tailored that it might as well be made from a single piece of cloth. She wondered if his mane needed the same amount of hair gel as an anime protagonist. He put her meal on the table and one by one removed the lids from the platters. For the appetizer, slow-baked imported crackers. Imported pine cones from Yakakistan baked in a honey imported from Bumbleland for the main course with a side of breadsticks, and for dessert, a peanut butter pie. Trixie licked her lips, gazing at the huge meal using ingredients she had never even heard of, much less expected to taste, her mouth heavily watering. Not too terribly long later, Trixie patted her muzzle with the fancy provided napkin, having left nothing but the plates on the table.
Oh, that was by far the best meal Trixie had ever eaten. She should wish to eat like this more often.
"We are quite glad you enjoyed the meal, madam," said the waiter, floating a rather long slip of paper in front of her face in his telekinesis. Trixie blinked.
What's this?
"The bill." Trixie's eyes went wide as dinner plates at the incredibly long number presented by the bill. Another clean plate was slowly placed on a massive pile. Trixie paused only to get a dry towel, then sighed at the massive pile of dirty, incredibly extensive dishes still waiting for her. Pulling another dish off the pile, her eyes widened as several slipped and fell off. She cringed, expecting to hear the plates worth more than she probably made in a month shattering into millions of pricey pieces, but heard nothing. Blinking, she looked down to find that Pixie had caught the dishes without prompting, looking apologetic. The fairy looked around, making sure they weren't being watched, and then silently joined in helping wash then dry the dishes.
I'm sorry. You didn't say free meal,
muttered Pixie as they departed the restaurant.
And there's probably rules against that. Counterfeiting is wrong.
Trixie gave an exhausted sigh late into the night. She wanted to be angry, but Pixie had at least helped fix the mess, and Trixie was just too tired.
It's fine. Trixie at least got a reservation. and the meal was good. Just sleepy. Do you wish you were in bed? Yes.
With a wave of her wand, the two were back in Trixie's cart, the unicorn mare in bed and falling asleep before she could say another word. Pixie carefully tucked her in.
Sleep well, Pony Trixie,
said the fairy, kissing her on the forehead like a parent before returning into her own egg.
All right, Pixie,
said Trixie, standing outside her cart the next morning.
Trixie, I have a simple wish, and I've given it more thought. I'll do my best,
replied Pixie, looking eager to please. Trixie ran it all over in her head one more time, just to be sure.
Okay, I wish I was the most powerful pony in Equestria, and specifically, then I will be able to handle the power and not explode, or atomize a 5-mile radius, or go insane, or break my own legs from sheer power.
The fairy manifested a piece of paper and wrote it all down.
All right, got it. This one won't mess up, promise,
she exclaimed, swirling her wand and firing a blast of fairy dust at Trixie. She smiled widely, waiting for it to hit her, then had the very strange experience of being flung out of her body and sent hurtling across the world at hyperspeed. When she came to, she found herself not in her carriage, but instead in a strange, though exceedingly fancy room that she had never seen before in her life.
Where is Trixie?
She asked, looking around slowly in confusion, and noticing an abnormal amount of suns and moons and artifacts, along with several pictures of Twilight Sparkle, pictures of an orange-furred unicorn with red and yellow mane that she didn't remember, and Princess Luna. And that wasn't all she noticed.
What's wrong with my voice? And why is everything so short?
She inquired.
Did Pixie make Trixie a giant?
She walked around her new surroundings until she saw a very imposing visage looking back at her.
Ah! Princess Celestia! Trixie is sorry for the alicorn amulet. It was an accident!
She frantically shouted, genuflecting and slamming face first into the ground due to her legs seeming far longer than she had expected.
Ah! What the?
Slowly rising up, she looked back at Celestia and noticed that she looked as confused as her, and was also rubbing her muzzle. Trixie reached out a hoof, and it met Celestia's, only to instead feel the cold, solid surface rather than the hoof of another pony. Trixie's eyes went wide as dinner plates. She was looking into a mirror.
I'm Celestia?
She asked, looking herself over in panic.
Oh, no, this isn't good. Trixie is still in the body of the most powerful pony in Equestria,
she muttered, realization setting in before she face-huffed. Having underestimated her new godly strength, this in turn sent her flying back to land on Celestia's bed.
Ow. Strongest pony in Equestria, with a body that Trixie won't destroy. Trixie didn't specify whose body. Well, now what?
Trixie questioned.
Wait, if Trixie is Celestia, then she could command ponies to not hold Trixie's past actions against her, and they would have to listen, or give herself a glowing endorsement. She'd attend one of her shows, but that would be difficult.
Before Trixie could consider the many things she could use her phenomenal cosmic power for, there was a knock upon her door. The mare in the body of an alicorn's eyes widened, and she quickly got to her hooves and put her acting talents into presenting the best approximation of the co-leader of Equestria that she could manage.
Come in,
she announced in a refined but slightly over-the-top voice. Raven Inkwell entered.
Your Majesty, you are needed in the throne room. Understood. What is on the agenda today? A trip to a foreign land? A battle with some ancient evil?
Trixie groaned, seated on Celestia's throne. She had dreamed of this, as many young ones may have all her life. But now she wished Pixie was here so she could reverse the wish, and wish for it to be wiped from memory. As you can see, the city of Manhattan's water consumption is unusually high this year. We've gone through this detailed analysis to find the problem, said the stallion, who was likely the most boring creature that Trixie had ever met, or would have been if he wasn't the 9th one like him this day, all equally as dull and boring. Still, she couldn't just banish him to the moon or the sun or whatever and be done with it. And if she broke character, then ponies might think she was that changeling queen she had heard about, and that might get her blasted with the elements of harmony and sealed in stone for 1,000 years. And while Trixie had always wanted to be immortalized in statue form, well, that wasn't the way she wanted to do it. What do you think we should do, Princess? Asked the stallion. The mare barely managed to avoid jumping. She quickly gave it thought while desperately trying not to look as nervous as she felt.
Well, flowers and plants typically take up a lot of water when it's hot. That's why, say, just as an example, a traveling unicorn in a carriage wouldn't have a box garden unless she needed them for, say, a magic act. So perhaps ponies are watering their gardens more often and too much, and we need to schedule more cooler days,
she proposed, waiting for his response, and all too aware that she was in deep trouble if her answer was not up to snuff. That is a great answer, Your Majesty, replied the stallion with a bow. Thank you.
You're welcome, my little pony.
Trixie did her best to hide her sigh of relief, and then her annoyance when she realized the line continued to the door and beyond it when it was opened for the stallion to leave. A long time later, Trixie could have sworn it was supposed to be nighttime already. But she was still sitting here, listening to boring bureaucrats. Trixie had been extremely relieved to find Celestia had many extremely knowledgeable advisors on a wide range of subjects she could call upon at a moment's notice. And she had. Many times. So many times. Sister! Trixie gulped, recognizing the voice of the other princess, and the one pony who may very easily recognize that something was wrong. Luna flew in with a dramatic flair Trixie had to genuinely respect, looking more concerned than angry with her.
You have not joined me to lower the sun and raise the moon. It's been a few hours past the time, and I was afraid you'd been kidnapped again.
Trixie resisted the urge to face Hoof again.
I'm sorry, sister. I lost track of time with all the bureaucracy.
The Night Princess gave a sympathetic look at the still rather sizable line of ponies.
I see. I know how that feels when it comes to traveling the Dream Realm. And you do look mentally fatigued.
Raven cleared her throat, moving forwards.
Every pony, we are out of time for today. Please come back tomorrow.
Luna led Trixie over to the balcony, and her horn began to glow. Trixie gulped and tried to imagine the sun moving, and she did manage to grab it, but her control over it was finicky at best, going more in a squiggle than a line. She tried to keep pace with Luna, but ended up launching the sun down past the horizon. To her relief, rather than blowing her cover, this instead resulted in the feeling of being violently ejected out of her body and back across the world. A moment later, Trixie gasped like she came up from being underwater due to the strain she'd felt suddenly vanishing, finding herself standing in her carriage, staring at Pixie. The fairy was looking down, downtrodden and worried.
wrong?
Pixie blinked, looking up at her.
Trixie? Yes?
The fairy flew over and hugged her tightly.
Oh, thank goodness you're okay. I'm sorry. I didn't know where you went. I'd been looking all over for you. I came back when I saw the sun starting to come down. Oh, I'm just so glad my spell wore off,
she exclaimed, seeming almost like a worried mother who had lost their child at a market than the energetic, peppy fairy she'd been mostly seeing her as. Trixie was tempted to say something, but for the moment simply patted the fairy on the back. A moment later, she found her words.
It's okay. Trixie's fine. Assuming that Celestia doesn't get... Oh no.
In a flash of orange light, Celestia appeared in her carriage and immediately had to duck due to the limited room. Trixie gasped in horror and genuflected as quickly as possible.
Princess, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Please don't imprison me in the place you banished me to.
Pixie flew protectively in front of Trixie.
Hello, Princess. I'm sorry. This isn't Trixie's fault. The wish went wrong. She never meant to steal your body. I take all responsibility for it.
Celestia stood over them as well as she could for a moment, then put a hoof on Pixie's shoulder.
Hello, Pixie. I see you're still a fairy godparent,
she said calmly.
It's okay. It was an honest mistake,
she continued, then gave a warm smile.
And honestly, it was kind of fun.
Trixie's eyes went wide.
What? I got a day off. That is a very rare thing for me. If you would like to take my place some other day, I would be more than willing to... No!
Trixie screamed, then looked terrified.
Trixie means no thank you. One day with the bureaucrats is quite enough for one lifetime.
Celestia gave a good-natured chuckle.
And that, my little pony, is another reason why I'm not mad at you,
she replied.
I could have retaken my place whenever I wanted, simply by contacting my sister and having her briefly lower the sun. But you were doing a good job, and I felt dealing with my court was more than punishment enough,
she replied, before turning to leave.
Oh, and by the way, Trixie, I had a little, fun with your body in the meantime. I hope you don't mind,
the Princess of the Sun replied, before teleporting away. Trixie's eyes widened.
Wait, Celestia was in Trixie's body? What did she do?
She asked, then noticed a large bag of bits on the counter nearby, flowers and signatures from fans, as well as pictures of a performance she didn't remember partaking in.
She helped Trixie. Why would she do that? Yeah, Princess Celestia has always been forgiving, even after that time I was a weather fairy,
Pixie replied. She floated down next to her, putting a hand on her shoulder.
I understand if you don't want me to be your fairy anymore. Just say the word and I'll go.
Trixie turned to look at the caring face of her fairy. Well, the wish hadn't gone as planned, but it still worked out in the end.
You can stay.
Pixie's eyes went wide and excitable. The energetic fairy returned.
You mean it?
Trixie nodded.
Indeed. Though perhaps next wish won't be so grand. But first thing is first. Trixie needs to get some sleep. Yeah, I really do. Thanks for saying so. Thanks, Trixie. You're a good pony to be a fairy, too. And you're a good fairy.